Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod with Reiner Kraft with us today. He's PhD and founder at The Mindful Leader. We're going to talk about biohacking today. We're going to talk about Silicon Valley, high performance mindset, and everything between. This podcast is brought to you by podpire.com. That's my podcasting agency. If you want to start, scale, be invited to a podcast or sponsor one, you can go to podpire.com. Rainer, welcome to Pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and tell me about the Mindful Leader.
Yeah, thanks, Charles, for having me on the show. I'm not sure where to start. It's a long story, but I started in tech in the mid-90s and spent most of the time in California, Silicon Valley. And then, yeah, things evolved and I got bigger into leadership topics, but also a lot of technical topics, especially in the past 10 years, the whole field of machine learning, AI, and so on. So I've been in a variety of projects, working in large corporations like Yahoo, IBM Research, Zalando here in Europe, but also setting up a fintech startup for Deutsche Bank. And a few years ago, I decided to create my own startup, The Mindful Leader, because I figured that what I've observed myself in the field is that we all could benefit from a little bit more, I call it awareness, present awareness. We can also benefit from really upgrading our mind operating system, the Mind OS. There's a lot of benefits, and usually the default setting in your Mind OS is not that great. I know from my own experience, and I've been through all that stuff, and that's why more and more I got motivated to go deeper into neuroscience, but also later in biohacking, functional medicine, epigenetics, and so on.
Tell us why you got into this and tell us about your time in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, I mean, this was when I got there was in the mid-90s. This was when I just finished my computer science studies. And it was a really cool time. Like as a computer scientist, you go there. There were all these, at that point, famous internet companies. Like you may remember Netscape as an example, but many others. Of course, Apple, Microsoft, it's been around there, IBM, and so on. But also a lot of startups. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. So after being there for a few weeks, I decided this is a great place. Let's stay here. Let's see how things are unfolding. And we never thought basically at that point, my wife and myself, right? We were always thinking, how long do we stay here? But we didn't really know. And then 1 year added to the next. And then all of a sudden, you've been there for 20 years, right? So time goes by. Yeah, but I've been I think in a really important phase there when the internet was just starting, and then later on, 10 years later, also when the smartphones came up, right? Like iPhone, and then also machine learning took off more and more. I mean, we worked on machine learning topics back in these early days, like 2003, 4, 5 already. But later on, it got more and more emphasis, and then it morphed more and more into AI, deep learning, or some other fancy terms for it. So I've been pretty much through all those iterations in this field. So that was for a computer scientist, definitely exciting time, I would say.
And why did you decide to biohack and treat high performance more seriously than most?
Well, at some point, I think the problem is that when you're so busy with all your work stuff, you forget about that there's also a body, right? A body that needs to, I mean, people talk about work-life balance. And why are they talking about it? It's because of the mind and the body, right? And so they want, if you want to take proper care of your body, usually it's not a priority, but it becomes a priority when you run into typical over long periods of time, like mental exhaustion, or other people, they go right into burnouts, right? So at that point, you have no choice. Then you have to deal with it. And it can be a very tedious, painful process. And myself, I got into mental exhaustion at some point. I couldn't even understand what's going on, because for me, I always felt that work is so much fun, and I kept working and working away day and night, right? But at some point, the resources are simply not there anymore. And at that point, you have no choice. Either you do something or you basically will have more and more problems, health problems eventually, and then you can't ignore it anymore. So it's just a matter of time. And that got me thinking about, well, why does it have to be that way? Why can I just work in a state of what I nowadays call a high performance mind, right? How can I work in this high performance state, but in a sustainable way so that I don't burn out? How is that possible? And that motivated me to figure that out. But to solve that problem, I spent more than a decade basically digging into all the different aspects of the mind, how the mind works, what can you do to optimize the mind. But then eventually also the body. How do you fix the body, right? How do you make it healthier and more, yeah, get more energy in, make it flourishing, basically.
What are your tips when it comes to self-care to make sure that you're not coming near a burnout?
Yeah, I mean, so what I learned, first thing is you have to, I think the first thing is, so I divide these aspects in different areas. There is awareness, becoming more and more aware, self-aware. So this is really the pillar, the foundation of everything. And on top of this, once you become more aware, this is only when you can do some true transformation, because you have to become aware also of the mind, of what's happening inside the mind. So if you think about it as this complex, the mind OS, mind operating system, so it's a complex piece of software, and you need to be able to start observing all those subroutines, those thoughts, without getting entangled into it. So when people, for instance, become reactive, let's say they are in a meeting, they get reactive, defensive, or whatever it is, they are already identified and entangled with thoughts. And so that is the problem. And so first, that's why you have to first boost your awareness level, so to become aware when you get entangled, so that you can create a little bit of distance. And then furthermore, you have to also become aware of your body. People call it body awareness. So if your body tells you these very subtle signals, you better listen to them, right? And so that's why, to get started, you work on boosting awareness. You gradually work a little bit on the mind, and in parallel, you work a little bit on the body. And the process there is called biohacking. It's been also out there more than a decade. But the science behind it is the science of epigenetics as well as functional medicine. So there's a lot of science on all those things out there. And you do a little bit here and there. So you do a little bit for the mind, a little bit for the body, a little bit for the awareness. And then you get synergistic effects that take place, right? And then everything gets a little bit easier. It's like the snowball, right? That accumulates, and the further you are, the more you accumulate, and the easier it gets for you, and the more breakthroughs you can achieve.
Right. And okay, so biohacking, let's say you're a founder or a CEO, what would be these specific day-to-day biohacks that I can implement to increase my performance at work?
Well, I think I mean, very practically, the first thing you have to optimize is your sleep. This is like the most important thing. Sleep is recovery, and unfortunately, a majority of problems have or a majority of problems originate from a lack of sleep. And so, or good sleep or quality sleep. And so that's why, first of all, you have to fix your sleep. And then over the day, to boost awareness, you have to work with some mindfulness exercises, but usually things that are easy to do that you can do anywhere because people are busy and don't have time to sit there in meditation for, I don't know, 20 minutes or more. So you have to find routines, lightweight mindfulness exercises that are easily integratable into your day, stuff that usually you do anyway. But you have to start tracking all those things because otherwise it's not going to happen, right? So if you, for instance, as a CEO said, oh yeah, cool, I want to become more aware. My sleep is now getting a little bit better. But by the way, for the sleep, you also need a sleep tracker here, like the Oura Ring or some other sleep tracker device, so that you actually know that your sleep is good. It's not helping if you say, oh yeah, I sleep well, but how do you know, right? Let's look at the data. Same for the becoming more aware. You need data, and I call them mind KPIs. And this is what I'm usually teaching when I work with CEOs or executive, teach them how to actually set up these mind KPIs, the tracking. Because at the end of the day, you need to know, did I actually do something to boost my awareness or not? And if you don't have the data, you can't answer the question. So that is the big problem, right? And so that's why little things can go a long way, but they need to be tracked. And then obviously there has to be some exercises in the course of the day for boosting the mind, debugging the mind. Usually you do those things in the evening when I usually recommend a little bit of journaling activities. And then the biohacks at the end, they target more the body, boils down to nutrition. It boils down to micronutrients, basically amino acids, proteins, right? Healthy, optimal nutrition. So all the good stuff that people, or exercise, of course, sports, exercise, all the good stuff. So that takes care of the body. But usually people are not able to do any of those because the mind is their enemy, right? The mind is the programming of the mind prevents them from actually taking care of the body. That's why, again, you have to go back, fix awareness first, then you can fix the mind, then you fix the body in that order.
The clients that you normally get, what kind of challenges do they have and who are they?
Yeah, usually, so I work a lot with entrepreneurs, executives, leaders. The challenges usually are very similar. They need a high level of energy, they need a high level of resilience, they need to be ultra focused for longer periods of time to get a lot of stuff done, not getting easily distracted. So focus is actually a big topic. To be honest, that is one of the most important ones. Then the resilience, as I said earlier, is probably number two, because if people are not resilient in these roles that they are in there, they can't get stuff done, right? They pretty much get knocked out very quickly. So they need to be ultra resilient. And to do that, so these type of challenges that then come up in their environment usually is a lot of information to absorb on a daily basis, tight deadlines, so a lot of stress, right? There's boom, 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 like stress goes on like crazy, working around the clock. And so the challenges are always very similar. How can you survive this madness? But even better, how can you thrive in this environment? Because you can't usually change the environment, but you can change your thinking about it and you can upgrade your mind and body so that you are better equipped to handle this workload and stress. Because if you don't do it, eventually there is this process I mentioned at the beginning, mental exhaustion knocks on your door, the body gets in bad shape, you get sick, all kind of health problems arise, right? And that's why there's a big similarity when it comes to the challenges for those people I work with, and it's usually very similar.
resilience. How do you develop that resilience? Is it sheer exposure? What kind of mental algorithm can you adopt to accelerate that resilience as a skill?
Yeah, I mean, resilience requires that the body first has a lot of resources available. Because if you are in a stressed mode, the body needs more than typical. It needs a lot of resources to do all the processing and handling. And so making sure the body has really everything it needs in sufficient levels is so important. But then people, they don't eat healthy, right? They grab some fast food or something, or they don't eat at all or whatever. So from food alone, usually you can't get all those nutrients into your body that you need. So you need supplements. And you need, however, to figure out what supplements do you need, the right amount, the right mix. And that depends on your genetic blueprint. So because we're all different, if I basically say here, oh, here's a little magnesium supplement, it could be that for you, that might be completely sufficient. It works well. For another one, this is like, it's nothing, right? They need much more. It really depends, right? Since we're all different. So supplementing itself is a science and an art. Personal, so I call it personalized micronutrients. And figuring that part out is a process, but that is usually when the magic happens. If you figure that part out based on your genes and your genetic profile and figure out what you actually need for your body to thrive, then fill these things up. Of course, you still need that sleep that I mentioned earlier, a really optimized sleep, fully recovered. Otherwise, you're not resilient. And then you also need to upgrade the mind, because usually the mind puts a lot of it generates the stress. The mind is usually where the stress gets generated. So you need to upgrade the mind so that it produces less stressful thoughts, less negative thoughts. And that is an important piece in the puzzle, because otherwise you do all this refilling and upgrades on the body, but then on the the mind side, it basically depletes all that effort and works counterproductive. So it needs to come all together. So that is pretty much the magic mix here, is make sure the mind activity gets decreased to produce less stressful thoughts and stressful activity, thinking activity. The body needs to be upgraded, needs to have all the building materials so that it can produce and break down all those neurotransmitters that do the signal processing in the brain. And then bringing these things then together in a daily routine that works for you and is highly individualized, because we also have we have different routines, we have different habits, we have different contexts. It needs to work for us. This is basically the art of building this lifestyle, which I call the high performance mind. So high performance mind at the end is a lifestyle. When you figure out in a data-driven way, through KPIs, through measurements, what you need for your mind and body to thrive, basically.
Brain's not shutting down. I had that when I started in entrepreneurship. How can you focus your energy and become a great energy manager as a founder?
Yeah, it's I mean, what I mentioned earlier, it goes really back to the awareness factor. So you have to become really aware. If you have to be fully present, connected to the present moment, to realize that, oh, my mind is now again in this energy sucking, burning mode, producing all the stressful thoughts, right? First, you have to become aware of it, that this is actually happening, because people are so identified with their thinking activities, they don't even realize that. And this is when they basically burn all this energy on one side, but because of the high thought level activity, they can't be focused. So they get distracted all the time. They start with something, the next thought comes, they get identified, sucked into that thought, and so they can't get anything done, right? So to master this, you first have to really become aware when this is happening, realize, this is happening. Then you have to have some tools that you, and these are individual, they work from person to person differently, and we all have different preferences, but you have to find those tools that you can then use to declutter the mind, to get it more in a calm state. Because if it's in a calm state, you're also using less energy and you're putting less stress onto the body. And that's how you, and then of course, on the other hand, you have to still optimize and manage the body. And for that, of course, there is also many devices out there help you do the tracking. Like I mentioned, the Oura Ring earlier. There is fitness bands. There is all kind of blood work that you can do when you work with functional medicine practitioner to make sure some of those key blood markers, biomarkers are in good shape. So you have to become a master, or I think someone used the term, become the CEO of yourself, right? And that means of awareness, mind, and body. And that is something you have to learn. It's like going to university or to school. You have to do a lot of learning, absorbing a lot of knowledge that you actually know what you're doing. And that is what requires dedicated time. And so there is a learning curve, steep learning curve, to be honest. And the problem is, if you are in a founder role, CEO role, whatever, usually the day only has 24 hours. How much time can you dedicate for yourself, right? So you have to be smart, figuring out, especially in the beginnings, setting aside a little bit of time to start learning these things, start implementing these things. But then what I've seen over time is with a high performance mind, you get better, more efficient, and you can get stuff done in maybe half the time what you needed before. So that means you free up more time. And now when you can free up more time, it's not to fill it back with more work. The idea is then that you can use that free time to generate this balance, to recover yourself, to also do other things beside work, so that you finally are able to create this balance, but not so you're not sacrificing your work. So this is the beauty here, basically.
Right. What about the challenging times that we're in? It seems that no one can agree on pretty much anything online and all that noise, and then we have porn and technology and all of that. How can founders find focus in a sea of noise?
Yeah, it's really hard, to be honest, right? Times are changing. Like when I was starting in the work field, the internet was just emerging. There was no social media, and I mean, cell phones at that point, you wouldn't basically, I mean, these are clunky devices. I wouldn't carry them around, right? And so the number of distractions, they were not that bad, but over time they got more and more. And nowadays it's crazy stuff, right? And there's so much distraction going on. In the recent studies, already 3 years ago, I've seen that is that the attention span of a typical person is like 7 seconds or less. So it's like a goldfish. Some people may have heard that. And the goldfish basically, with this type of attention span, what can you get done, right? It's really when you wanna transcend this limitation of having an attention span of a goldfish, you have to work on yourself and find practical tools. That's what I did then over the years, to eliminate these distractions. Because when you can eliminate them on the root, on the source, right, then you get exposed already to fewer of those, and of course you have to use less processing power. But that is effort. It's really active effort, right? And just trying to do this, let's say you set yourself a task, how can I declutter all these social media channels, emails, and all this garbage for myself that works well, so that I still get my relevant information and and decrease my noise level by 95%, this is probably a big project over several weeks to gradually figure out how you can arrive at this system, right?
On your side, what are your top 3 goals for 2024?
So I think in the current climate, it looks like things get more and more, everything gets a little bit more and more difficult. There's so much chaos around us. You turn on the news, which I hardly do, by the way, because that is another source of distraction, right? And there's a lot of negativity in the news. And so the challenges remain. We had the pandemic, and who knows what comes next. And people still struggling with the aftermath of COVID, of the vaccination. And so health-wise, I'm working with a lot of clients, they're not in good shape health-wise. So the health challenges probably will go up further. The amount of noise is probably also increasing. On the other hand, artificial intelligence, you see more and more now really getting into the day-to-day business in products, in improving existing products. And I think narrow type of AI applications will continue to get better and better and flourish next year. And that can, of course, help to get rid of a lot of these routine type of things that we used to do. So there will be a lot of productivity boost as well, some good stuff. But I think the challenge is and remains raising more awareness globally on the planet, because that is actually really needed also in the future to increase consciousness in general, right? I think with all the power that we get from technologies like AI, there comes a certain responsibility as well. And if our if our level of awareness keeps going down, if that is the case, that wouldn't look good, right? So my hope is more and more awareness is coming in and helps us through these challenging times. And I also hope that more and more people proactively start working on themselves, become the CEO of themselves, and actually invest time and resources in getting really better and reaching a state of a high performance mind.
Where can people find out more about you, Reiner?
Yeah, there is my website, themindfulleader.net, and probably can share the link later in the show notes. So themindfulleader.net contains a lot of the resources, stuff I'm talking about, videos, but also my training program and other resources that help you to reach this high performance mind state for yourself.
I'm Charles Cormier, your host. That was another founder, wisdompodcast.com with Reiner Kraft.